As the standard of living in Canada continues to decline, the amount of taxes that Canadians pay increases, leaving them with less money in their pockets as taxation outpaces the cost of all other basic necessities combined.
What he is proposing to do is to make Canada great again. That is not what Canadians want.
Earlier this month, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance Chrystia Freeland asserted that Canada is the best country in the world, failing to recognize that Canada's living standards are declining rapidly relative to other developed nations.
And my perspective is that Canada is the best country in the world, and Canadians are amazing. And it is a huge privilege for me to serve Canada and Canadians as your finance minister and as your deputy prime minister.
Freeland's remarks come just weeks before the recent report from the Fraser Institute that found Canadians pay nearly half of their income to taxes, more than all of their basic necessities combined. The full report found that the average Canadian family now spends more of its income on taxes, 43%, than it does on basic necessities such as food, shelter, and clothing combined, for a total of 35.6%. By comparison, 63 years ago in 1961, 33.5% of the average family's income went to pay taxes versus 56.5% to basic necessities. The graph on page 4 of the full report shows the massive increase in consumer taxation since that time, with noticeable jumps in 2022 and 2023. The Fraser Institute points out that because federal and provincial governments have been running budget deficits to cover expenses, something especially heightened during the knee-jerk and hysterical COVID-19 response, these deficits will eventually need to be paid off through taxes. But running at a deficit postpones that recouping. This tax deflection means that the average family's total tax bill is actually much higher if the cost of deferred taxes were taken into account. Now look at that massive federal deficit surge in 2020. Here's what a few Canadians in the street had to say about where they think taxes should be going.
On kids' schools, and definitely number one, healthcare. Not for our Prime Minister's trips and travels.
Well, all the infrastructure stuff. We need roads and bridges and all that kind of stuff. I always want to see more money put into the arts, but that's me. Immigration, I would say. I think it can be sorted out a little bit better.
Well, right now, look at the public roads. They're disgraceful. A lot of roads are not fit to even drive on. I think we could use it there. You got a housing problem in Canada. Seniors, they got problem with housing. They're not finding housing.
Tax dollars should be best spent in our own pockets. When you're making $10,000 a month offshore, you shouldn't be paying 60% of that to the government. We should be able to keep some more of that. So I'd say best spent in our own pockets.
As taxes have outpaced every other basic necessity expenditure since 1961, it's clear that this will only serve to dampen the economy, with bad policy and regulatory burdens driving out innovation and investment. Meanwhile, the Liberals prioritize funding things like the failed billion-dollar drug and substance use strategy that has only seen an increase in overdoses and illicit drug-related harms across the nation, and funding proxy wars in Ukraine, with recent budgetary allowances showing Canada has committed over $12.4 billion in financial assistance to Ukraine instead of reinvesting here at home to help Canadians. With a pandemic hiring spree bureaucracy that became turbocharged during the COVID-19 government-sanctioned response, bloating 3 times faster than the private sector that lagged substantially behind, it's time for Canadians to rein in reckless government spending, advocate for smaller, more efficient government, and push for policies that restore a higher quality of life. For Rebel News, I'm Tamara Ugolini. Despite the dwindling quality of living, runaway inflation, failing policy, and poor governance, the federal members of parliament get a pay raise every year on April 1st. Demand Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland stop this automatic pay hike, further bloating the bureaucratic wage, at stopthepayhike.ca. stopthepayhike.ca. Consider donating whatever you can there to support our work. That's stopthepayhike.ca.